What if everything you believed about friendships was about to change? As we age, the friendships that once defined us often fade into the background. For many people in their 70s, the bonds that once seemed essential to happiness now feel less important, almost irrelevant. But here's the twist. It's not about loneliness or isolation. It's about embracing a newfound freedom, a life where personal well-being takes center stage and the need for constant social connections fades. In this video, we'll reveal 6 surprising reasons why friendships may not be as necessary in your later years, and how this shift could lead to a more fulfilling, independent life. Stick around, because what you discover might just change the way you view your relationships forever. If you're not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell to avoid missing any videos. 1. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. As we grow older, one of the most liberating realizations is that we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves to anyone. In our younger years, friendships and relationships often revolve around desire to fit in, be seen, or impress others. Social validation was a major driving force, whether it came from peers, colleagues, or acquaintances. We spent much of our time seeking approval, striving to be accepted, and try to live up to certain expectations. Many of our friendships were formed not out of genuine connection, but out of a shared need for validation. However, as we age, this urge to seek approval from others begins to fade. With time, we come to understand that our self-worth is not defined by the opinions or judgments of those around us. Take Harold, for example. In his 70s, Harold had spent the majority of his life climbing the corporate ladder, surrounded by colleagues and acquaintances. He thought of many of these people as friends, but after retiring, he began to notice that many of these relationships started to wither away. Initially, he felt compelled to keep in touch with these people, but over time, he realized something important. Why maintain friendships that were only built on convenience and not genuine connection? Letting go of these superficial relationships gave Harold a sense of freedom. He no longer felt burdened by the obligation to keep up appearances or engage in shallow conversations. Instead, he rediscovered hobbies and passions he had long forgotten. For the first time in years, Harold felt at peace with himself. This shift is incredibly powerful. As we get older, we learn that true fulfillment doesn't come from impressing others or seeking their approval. It comes from within. Once we stop trying to prove ourselves, we free up the energy and time that was once spent on meaningless social interactions. This newfound freedom allows us to live more authentically and focus on what truly brings us joy and contentment. 2. Peace becomes more valuable than socializing. As people grow older, many come to realize that peace and tranquility become far more valuable than the constant need for socializing. In their younger years, being social often felt like a necessity. There was always something happening. Gatherings, parties, group activities, and even the more casual get-togethers that seemed to define the rhythm of life. Socializing was not just an activity. It was a way of life. The noise of constant social engagement felt normal, and it was a major part of staying connected with friends, family, and colleagues. Engaging with others was a marker of a full, successful life. But as time goes on, people start to recognize that there's a deeper, more fulfilling kind of satisfaction that comes from embracing peace and solitude rather than being caught in the whirlwind of social obligations. Consider Margaret, for instance. At 74, she has spent much of her life attending lunch gatherings, participating in group calls, and celebrating holidays with friends and family. Initially, these social interactions were a source of enjoyment, providing connection and a sense of community. But over the years, Margaret started to notice that the events that once brought her joy began to feel more draining than fulfilling. She realized that many of her friendships had settled into a pattern of routine, with conversations that no longer sparked her interest or offered meaningful connection. Over time, this realization started to weigh on her, and she began to feel a deep sense of exhaustion after every social event. Eventually, Margaret decided to make a change. She no longer felt guilty about turning down invitations or stepping away from social commitments that had become more of a responsibility than a source of pleasure. Instead of feeling like she had to keep up with a busy social calendar, she began to embrace the quiet. Margaret discovered the joy in spending time alone, in nature, and in the simple pleasures of life that didn't require constant interaction. She took long walks, read books that had been sitting on her shelf for years, and spent time reflecting on her thoughts. Through this shift, Margaret found that solitude didn't mean loneliness. It was, in fact, a wellspring of peace, providing a calm and serene environment where she could recharge and reconnect with herself. As we grow older, we start to truly appreciate the value of our time and how we choose to spend it. The social obligations that once felt essential now seem like unnecessary burdens. Attending every gathering or maintaining every friendship no longer holds the same appeal it once did. Instead, the quiet moments, those spent in the freedom of solitude, hold much more value. There is something deeply fulfilling about having the space to choose what you want to do with your day, without feeling the pressure to conform to expectations or live up to social norms. This shift in perspective is empowering. It allows for a deep sense of liberation and self-awareness. You begin to realize that you don't need to prove anything to anyone or fill your schedule with endless social engagements to feel worthy or valued. The freedom to be alone, to embrace peace, and to make choices based on what brings you joy becomes a true source of contentment. With fewer distractions, you have the opportunity to focus on things that truly matter, whether that's personal growth, indulging in a long-lost hobby, or simply enjoying the quiet moments of life. Peace, after all, becomes the most precious and irreplaceable gift, one that becomes more valuable as we age and learn to prioritize our well-being. 3. Fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. As people age, one of the most eye-opening realizations is that having fewer friendships often leads to fewer disappointments. Throughout life, friendships often come with a set of expectations. You're expected to check in, make yourself available, offer support, and show up for others when they need you. These expectations, while natural in close relationships, can sometimes create pressure. But what happens when those expectations aren't met? The result is often disappointment, frustration, or feelings of being taken for granted. As people grow older, they begin to understand that fewer, more meaningful friendships can lead to greater peace and contentment. Take William, for example. At 78 years old, William had experienced many friendships that came and went throughout his life. For much of his younger years, he had always been the one to put in the effort, calling friends, making plans, and doing his best to maintain those relationships. However, as time passed, William noticed that many of these friendships began to fade. Some people he had known for decades became too busy with their own lives, while others seemed distracted or simply uninterested in maintaining the connection. Initially, this bothered William. He found himself wondering if he had done something wrong, or if he had missed some crucial part of the relationship. He questioned whether he had failed in some way. But over time, William came to a significant realization. He wasn't the one who had changed. Instead, he had stopped tolerating relationships that were not mutually fulfilling. He recognized that some friendships were based on convenience or habit, rather than genuine connection. The more he reflected, the more he understood that friendships shouldn't feel like a constant source of stress or frustration. He didn't need to maintain an expansive social circle to feel fulfilled. By letting go of the idea that he needed to keep every relationship alive, William freed himself from the weight of unmet expectations. This shift in perspective brought William peace. He no longer had to deal with the disappointment of one-sided friendships or frustration of constantly giving without receiving. Instead, he began focusing on relationships that truly mattered, the ones where mutual care and effort were present. These friendships brought him joy without the need for constant effort or maintenance. This realization allowed William to lead a simpler, more fulfilling life, where fewer connections meant less emotional investment in relationships that weren't truly meaningful. Ultimately, having fewer but more authentic friendships led to greater satisfaction and less heartache. The lesson is clear. Sometimes, it's not about the quantity of friends you have, but the quality of those friendships that makes all the difference. If you're still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. 4. Your time becomes more precious. As people enter their 70s, they come to realize that time has become more precious than ever. When you're younger, it's easy to take time for granted, assuming that there will always be more of it to spend with friends, attend gatherings, or nurture social circles. You don't feel the urgency to make the most of every moment. But as you grow older, your perspective shifts dramatically. You begin to understand that time is finite and every moment counts. Suddenly, you become acutely aware that your time is far too valuable to be wasted on obligations or activities that don't bring you genuine joy or fulfillment. Richard, a man in his early 80s, experienced this transformation firsthand. In his younger years, he had a vibrant social life filled with dinner parties, regular phone calls, and gatherings with friends. He enjoyed these interactions, finding comfort and excitement in his busy social schedule. However, as time passed and he grew older, Richard started to feel differently. The long conversations that once felt stimulating and engaging now seemed exhausting and draining. The social gatherings that had once been filled with laughter and connection now felt like burdens, with every event more an obligation than a source of enjoyment. One day, after attending yet another gathering that left him feeling unfulfilled, Richard made a significant decision. He would no longer say yes to social invitations out of habit. Instead of continuing to spend his time on activities that didn't bring him happiness or fulfillment, he chose to prioritize his own needs and well-being. Richard began to dedicate his time to things that truly mattered to him, reading books he had long been meaning to enjoy, taking walks in nature, and learning new skills that sparked his curiosity. What he found was that, far from feeling isolated or lonely, he felt more content and at peace than ever before. By reclaiming his time, Richard was able to cultivate a life that felt more meaningful and aligned with his values. This lesson is crucial. As you age, you earn the right to prioritize your time and how you spend it. You no longer need to fill your days with social engagements or commitments out of a sense of duty or expectation. Instead, you are free to spend your time on activities that bring you true joy and fulfillment, whether that means nurturing hobbies, enjoying quiet moments of reflection, or simply resting. The realization that you can control how you spend your time gives you the freedom to live authentically and embrace the activities that nourish your spirit. Time becomes a cherished resource, and the freedom to use it wisely is one of the greatest gifts of growing older. 5. True companionship comes from within. As we grow older, one of the most profound realizations we have is that true companionship doesn't come from others. It comes from within. Throughout much of our lives, we're often told that happiness is found through social connections, and that loneliness is something to be avoided at all costs. Society frequently reinforces the idea that our worth and happiness are tied to how many people we surround ourselves with. But as we age, we begin to realize that the most fulfilling companionship we can experience is the one we share with ourselves. Take Eleanor, for example. At 76, Eleanor had spent much of her life believing that she needed a constant stream of social interactions to feel happy. Her days were packed with plans and obligations, lunches with friends, group activities, and regular gatherings. Despite always being surrounded by people, Eleanor often felt drained and unsatisfied. She began to notice a recurring pattern. Many of her friendships were more about routine and maintaining appearances than about genuine connection. The relationship she had invested so much time and energy in didn't provide her with the deep fulfillment she had hoped for. It was at this point that Eleanor had an epiphany. She realized that, for most of her life, she had been chasing after social validation and the idea of external companionship, rather than learning to be comfortable in her own company. She decided to step back from her usual social obligations and start to spend more time alone. Instead of feeling lonely, she began to enjoy activities that brought her peace and joy, like reading, walking, and reflecting. As she spent more time with herself, Eleanor was surprised to discover how much happier and more content she became. The solitude that once seemed intimidating now felt refreshing and empowering. When you embrace solitude and learn to enjoy your own company, something remarkable happens. You unlock a sense of freedom and fulfillment that is unique to this stage of life. You no longer rely on others for validation, entertainment, or companionship. Instead, you become your source of joy, wisdom, and contentment. You begin to realize that the relationship you have with yourself is the most important one, and once you nurture that, everything else falls into place. This deep companionship with yourself brings peace and tranquility that external connections alone cannot provide. You no longer feel the need to be constantly surrounded by others to feel complete. The comfort of your presence becomes your greatest source of happiness. 6. Letting go opens the door to a more fulfilling life. One of the most powerful things you can do after 70 is to let go of relationships that no longer bring you joy. Throughout life, we often hold on to friendships and connections out of habit, even when they no longer serve us or contribute positively to our well-being. This tendency to cling to outdated relationships can trap us in a cycle of obligation and stress, draining our energy and taking away from the opportunities that could bring true fulfillment. But when you choose to release those relationships that no longer align with your values or bring you happiness, you open the door to a simpler, freer, and far more fulfilling life. Take James, for example. In his late 70s, James had long believed that staying socially active was a key to aging well. He had always been surrounded by friends, attended gatherings regularly, and felt that a busy social calendar was a sign of a good life. However, as time passed, James began to realize that he wasn't enjoying his social life the way he once had. The conversations began to feel repetitive, and the social gatherings that used to excite him now felt more like obligations and moments of connection. He found himself going through the motions, attending events and maintaining friendships, but all the while, he was no longer experiencing the joy or fulfillment he once had. One day, James decided he had had enough. He recognized that he was holding on to relationships simply out of routine, and it was time for a change. He stopped forcing himself to keep up with friendships that no longer felt meaningful and instead focused on what truly mattered to him. He began prioritizing his health, spending more time outdoors, and dedicating himself to activities that brought him joy and peace. By letting go of relationships that had become burdensome, James was able to embrace the freedom and simplicity that came with having a smaller circle of friends and more time for himself. The result of this shift? James felt lighter, happier, and more at peace than he had in years. By releasing the pressure of maintaining social obligations and no longer worrying about keeping up appearances or meeting others' expectations, James discovered a newfound sense of fulfillment. He learned that letting go of what no longer served him opened up space for what truly brought him happiness. This process of letting go was transformative, allowing him to live more authentically and enjoy life on his terms. In the end, choosing to let go of relationships that no longer serve us is a powerful act of self-care. It frees us from the weight of obligations and allows us to focus on what truly matters: our health, our happiness, and our personal growth. Letting go opens a door to a life that is simpler, more intentional, and far more fulfilling, allowing us to embrace the beauty of living with purpose and peace. As we explored today, growing older brings about some profound realizations that can truly enhance the way we live our lives. From letting go of the need to prove ourselves to others, to understanding the value of peace over constant socializing, and learning to prioritize our time and relationships, each of these insights can lead us to a more fulfilling, authentic, and joyful life. The lessons we've shared today are all about embracing who we are, finding contentment within, and letting go of the things that no longer serve us. So, what have you learned so far? Is there one particular lesson that stands out to you? Maybe you realize that true companionship starts with yourself, or that fewer friendships can lead to fewer disappointments. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. Comment below and share one thing you've learned from today's video that you plan to bring into your own life. Let us know how you're going to apply it. If you like this video, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.